fight fans around the world. It's we're back. We're talking fight here. Unfortunately, we don't have Graham with us at the moment. Today's the first day that patios are open. We've talked about that, so we are out and about and a bit mobile today. So there's a couple of things I wanted to cover with you guys real quick today. Just a couple of stories, and we're going to profile a couple of fighters. And as we move closer to the games themselves, we're going to start talking about some of the names that we're going to start seeing at the games and a bit of background on them. So we're going to do a quick one today. We're going to jump right in. So the head of Athletics Canada says that he won't be surprised if some of Canada's Olympic athletes partake in political protests during the medal ceremonies, as well as other high-profile moments at the Tokyo Summer Games. Now, that's despite rules banning political messages at the Olympics. Athletics Canada Chief Executive Officer David Bedford said that the topic of freedom of speech has been raised by some Canadian track and field athletes during the weekly webinars leading up to Tokyo. Now, athletes have been sharing mixed opinions about whether the medal ceremonies are appropriate, or whether that's an appropriate moment for such political messages. What Bedford actually said was, there are some who think that they should leave protests off the field of play, but others who feel very strongly that the best way to shine a light on a serious issue is the John Carlos, Tommy Smith way, by doing it on the field. Now, this was, Bedford said this in an interview recently, saying, and if it happens in Tokyo, it's not going to surprise me. Now, for those of you who don't know, during the medal ceremony for the 200-meter sprint at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City, Smith, who took home gold, as well as Carlos, who took home bronze, stood on the winner's platform and raised gloved fists in what was widely regarded as a Black Power salute. Now, and this was as the Star-Spangled Banner played and American flags were being raised inside a jammed Olympic stadium, as well as in front of a global television audience. So Smith and Carlos were suspended and then expelled for life from the Olympics for their protest, which came at a time, during assassinations, demonstrations against the war in Vietnam, and racial unrest in the United States. Should also be noted, though, that the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee did induct Smith and Carlos into its Hall of Fame in 2019. I digress. The International Olympic Committee said in April that athletes' protests and political messages would remain banned at the Olympics, citing an internal survey of 3,500 athletes conducted over the previous year. Now, the IOC didn't specify which athletes it canvassed, their ethnicity, nor the countries that they represented, saying that 70% of respondents said that it was not appropriate to demonstrate on the field of play or at opening and closing ceremonies. Now, the IOC said 67% of respondents disapproved of podium demonstrations. At the same time, the IOC has also not said yet what sort of consequences athletes might face if they are protesting. The Canadian Olympic Committee also wouldn't say what action, if any, it would take against Canadian athletes who violate the athlete contract known as the Olympic Charter and make political statements during medal ceremonies. Now, in a statement, Thomas Hall, who's a representative of the Canadian Olympic Committee, recently said in a written statement, "We will address any violations of the Charter on a case-by-case basis, taking into account a variety of factors, including context of the violation." So the COC saying that the COC supports athletes' right to freedom of expression and have focused on making sure Canadian athletes are crystal clear on the multiple ways that they can freely express themselves at the Tokyo Olympics and not violate these rules. The IOC has identified areas where athletes can speak freely. These include the mixed zone in the Olympic Village, as well as press conferences on social media and at any non-Olympic venue. Now, in its own survey in September, the Canadian Olympic Committee said that 80% of its current and retired Canadian Olympic athletes canvassed want to keep political protests off the field of play. Bedford said Athletic Canada wouldn't be penalizing Canadian athletes for protesting at the Olympics, but pointed out that athletes who compete at Tokyo do so under the jurisdiction of the IOC and the Canadian Olympic Committee, not Athletics Canada. So, something to keep in mind. I think it's going to be a bit of a mixed reaction whether or not we're going to be seeing too much in the way of these crackdowns, or what kind of retaliatory measures we're likely to see from the IOC. It's really up in the air at this point in time, and I think they're mostly just going to be happy to pull these games off, and I think it's going to be pretty light if anything happens, hopefully. But moving along, let's talk about a couple of boxers, a couple of names that you've been hearing me go on about for the last little while in some of our posts here, and a couple of names you're going to hear at the at the game. So over the next few days, we're going to be, in the coming weeks, we're going to be profiling, giving you some background on a few boxers that you're going to be seeing at the Olympic Games. So we're going to start off today with Alexander Kizhniak, who's a middleweight, fighting a middleweight out of Ukraine. Now, this is a man who's determined to follow in the footsteps of Vasyl Lomachenko and Alexander Usyk. Now, Kizhniak was born into a boxing family and began training under the watchful eye of his father at the age of 5. Now, Kizhniak Sr. himself had a boxing career in the former USSR and has passed all of his knowledge and experience on to his son. The Ukrainian 25-year-old has delayed his professional career because his main focus is still to bring home an Olympic gold medal from Tokyo. He became the world youth champion in 2012, European champion in 2017, and world champion in the same year. Now, last year, the Ukrainian Boxing Federation awarded its International Boxing Association, AIBA, 2020 Men's Best in Boxing prize to Kizhniak. And no doubt many back in the Ukraine will be watching with great interest to see how he fares at this summer, as well as beyond, moving into his professional career. The next guy we want to talk about today is another one we've heard a lot about recently, is Yumar Marshall, again a middleweight out of the Philippines this time. Now, Marshall is, again, also a middleweight, and he's going to be competing against Kizhniak this year in one of what's shaping up to be one of the most competitive divisions in the Olympic boxing tournament. Now, last year, the 25-year-old officially did turn pro after signing a deal with Manny Pacquiao Productions, although he says that he will continue to represent the Philippines in international amateur competitions, including the Games. Marshall has been training under Freddie Roach and is clearly headed in the right direction for a successful career in the pro ranks. His talents have always been evident, and the Filipino won the World Junior Championships to start this whole career off back in 2011. Now, he actually, as you guys will also know, he's been a bit at loggerheads with his training camp and has not joined the training camp with the rest of the Filipino team in Thailand, but has since the ASBC championships returned to the United States to finish his pre-Olympic training in the United States and working with Freddie Roach and coaches over there, as opposed to getting back in touch with the actual Olympic team in Thailand right now. So this is much to the consternation of his current coaches, who very much want to see him training in the Olympic style, not the professional fighting style, and they want to see him sparring with other members of the team. As their top medal contender at this point in time, they want him not only to get his training up to speed, but they want him to be helping to train their other fighters to better prepare them for their Olympic bouts. But tomorrow we're going to take a look at a couple more fighters, and we're going to be scanning the headlines from around the world. But that's what we've got today from around the rings. So we are here on the patios today in Toronto, so we're on our way out, and we will talk to you guys on Monday. You have yourself a good one. Actually, that's not true. I'll see you tonight at 7 for the panel. We'll talk then.